What does it take to land a major multi-year sponsorship deal in NASCAR? A championship? Multiple wins? Decades of grinding through the lower series? Not anymore.
Cleetus McFarland, a 31-year-old YouTuber from Omaha who finished 32nd at Rockingham, crashed at Daytona in the Truck Series, and came within 0.111 seconds of winning at Talladega, just secured a massive multi-year partnership with Polaris. And he didn't get it because of what he did on the track. He got it because of what he built off of it. Polaris isn't some small regional brand looking for cheap exposure. They're a $7.1 billion global leader in powersports and off-road vehicles. They build RZR off-road machines, Indian motorcycles, Ranger utility vehicles, and Snowforce snowmobiles. And they just bet big on a guy whose biggest NASCAR accomplishment so far is almost winning. That decision is exposing something massive happening beneath the surface of professional motorsports right now, a complete transformation of how sponsorship value is calculated. And whether you love it or hate it, Cleetus McFarland is at the center of a debate that's forcing NASCAR to confront an uncomfortable question: what matters more in 2026, how fast you are, or how many people are watching? We need to understand exactly who Polaris is, because that context makes this entire deal make sense in a way it wouldn't with just any company.
Polaris isn't looking for logo placement at a single race weekend. They're not a startup trying to piggyback on racing credibility.
They're one of the most established names in powersports, with products sold globally and a customer base that overlaps almost perfectly with car culture enthusiasts. Their customers are people who love horsepower, people who follow YouTube build channels, people who watch burnout compilations and backyard racing content before they ever tune into a Cup Series points race on Sunday afternoon. People who might not care about who won at Kansas, but will absolutely watch a 40-minute video about someone building a late model in their own shop. Sound familiar? That's the exact demographic Cleetus McFarland has been talking to for a decade. When Reed Wilson, Polaris president of off-road vehicles, said, "We are big fans of Cleetus and the community he has built. We couldn't just watch from the outside, we had to be a part of it," that wasn't corporate jargon. That was a business executive explaining a decision that made perfect financial sense the moment someone looked at the audience numbers. Cleetus responded the only way Cleetus can: "I built my community around freedom, horsepower, and having a good time, and Polaris fits that perfectly. They get the people, they get the spirit, hell yeah, brother." No buzzwords. No carefully written PR statement about brand synergy or aligned values. Just authenticity. And that authenticity is exactly why this deal happened in the first place.
Here's what separates Cleetus McFarland from almost every other YouTuber or influencer who has tried to break into professional motorsports. He didn't just show up with a camera and a dream. He showed up with a racetrack. In 2020, Cleetus bought the abandoned DeSoto Speedway in Bradenton, Florida. He poured everything he had into bringing it back to life. He renamed it the Freedom Factory and turned it into one of the most unique motorsports venues in the country.
The 2026 calendar at the Freedom Factory includes the Freedom 500, Burnout Rivals, Cars and Coffee events, and the Cleetus McFarland driving experience.
These aren't online-only gimmicks. These are real events with real crowds and thousands more watching online. That gives Polaris something they can't get from a traditional NASCAR sponsorship:
a physical home base where their products can be showcased, tested, demonstrated, and experienced by an audience that's already bought in.
When Polaris looks at Cleetus McFarland, they're not just seeing YouTube views.
They're seeing a guy with nearly 5 million subscribers, a racetrack he owns outright, multiple major annual events, a growing NASCAR schedule with Richard Childress Racing, and a fan base that will drive hours to show up in person.
That's not influencer marketing. That's infrastructure. And infrastructure is exactly what major brands are willing to write multi-year checks for.
Let's talk about something NASCAR teams have known forever but rarely say out loud: sponsors don't pay for speed.
They pay for eyeballs.
A driver who finishes top 5 every week but brings 0 new fans to the sport is worth less to a sponsor than a driver who finishes 15th but brings 1 million engaged viewers every race weekend.
That's not an insult. It's just business. NASCAR runs on sponsorship money. Sponsorship money follows audiences.
And Cleetus McFarland has an audience that most full-time NASCAR drivers would trade half their career stats to have.
The people who follow Cleetus aren't passive fans. They comment. They share. They show up to events. They buy the products that people they trust recommend to them.
That kind of loyalty takes years to build, and you can't fake it with a good marketing campaign.
Traditional NASCAR has spent the last decade trying to crack the code on reaching younger, more digitally engaged audiences.
Cleetus already has them, and they already trust him.
When Polaris puts their name on a car with Cleetus behind the wheel, those fans don't scroll past. They watch. They engage. They talk about it in Discord servers and YouTube comment sections. For a brand like Polaris, that reach is worth more than a top 10 finish that only hardcore NASCAR fans will remember by Monday. The sports core audience already knows the major sponsors. They've seen the same logos on cars for 30 years. But Cleetus opens the door to an entirely new group of people. And Polaris wants to be the first brand those people see when they walk through it. But here's where it gets messy, because not everyone in NASCAR sees this the same way. And honestly, the people pushing back have a legitimate point that deserves to be heard. The traditional NASCAR argument goes like this: race cars are for racers. You earn your seat by being fast. By grinding through ARCA, trucks, and Xfinity for years. By proving you belong at the highest level through skill, not subscriber count. The Cup Series is supposed to be the best of the best, not the most followed of the most followed. When an influencer attracts sponsorship dollars because of their YouTube channel instead of their lap times, it can take opportunities away from drivers who spent their entire lives developing their craft. Drivers who have more raw talent than they'll ever get credit for but don't have a viral moment or a massive online following to open doors. That concern is real. And it comes from a place that makes sense. The Cup Series is filled with drivers who sacrificed everything: time, money, relationships, opportunities, to earn their shot the traditional way. When a brand like Polaris chooses to attach their name to Cleetus McFarland, some of that sponsorship attention isn't going to those drivers. That's a fair critique. But here's the other side of it, and it matters just as much. Cleetus McFarland isn't faking it. He's not pretending to be a racer for content. He's actually racing. He bought a track. He runs events. He has a growing NASCAR schedule with Richard Childress Racing. He's working through a real development process and taking real lumps along the way. He crashed at Daytona. He finished 32nd at Rockingham. He blew an engine at Kansas. And he came 0.111 seconds away from winning at Talladega while leading laps at one of the most demanding superspeedways in motorsports. That's not someone cosplaying as a driver. That's someone putting in real work and getting better with every race. The Polaris deal isn't just rewarding subscriber count. It's rewarding the complete package: the track, the events, the audience, the actual racing, and most importantly, the authenticity that ties it all together in a way no corporate marketing team could ever manufacture. The debate about whether influencers belong in professional motorsports isn't going away. But the real story here isn't whether Cleetus McFarland has proven he's a top-tier NASCAR driver yet. He hasn't. The real story is that he's changing what NASCAR teams and sponsors consider valuable. And that shift has consequences that go way beyond one announcement from Polaris. If audience reach now factors into sponsorship decisions the same way lap times do, that fundamentally changes the kind of driver teams are looking for. It changes who gets opportunities. It changes what a racing career is supposed to look like in 2026 and beyond. Some people in the sport are going to welcome that change. They'll see it as evolution, as NASCAR finally adapting to the digital age and meeting fans where they actually are. Others are going to fight it. They'll see it as a betrayal of what earned merit is supposed to mean in professional racing. And both sides are going to be watching Cleetus McFarland's NASCAR schedule very closely for the rest of 2026 to see which argument ends up being right. He's got Nashville on May 30th with Richard Childress Racing. He's got a Cars Tour late model debut coming later this year in a car he's building himself in his own shop. He's got Dale Earnhardt Jr. personally welcoming him into the series he co-owns and offering mentorship.
And now he's got Polaris backing him with a multi-year deal that makes his entire operation bigger, better funded, and more visible than it was 6 months ago.
Cleetus McFarland didn't win a NASCAR race to land the Polaris deal. That's the entire point.
He got it because he built something NASCAR has been trying to build for years and couldn't, a loyal, growing audience of people who love car culture and are now paying attention to professional motorsports because of him.
And Polaris decided that was worth writing a check for.
Whether that makes you excited about the future of the sport or concerned about what's being left behind probably depends on how you define what makes a driver valuable in the first place.
But either way, this conversation is just getting started. If you made it this far, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more deep dives on what's really happening in NASCAR beyond the headlines. Drop a comment and let me know, do you think influencer sponsorships like this are good for the sport, or are they taking opportunities away from drivers who earned it the traditional way? I'll see you in the next one.